This is the current one.
We lived in that area.
And does Sudan recognize South Sudan?
No, it's way different.
Okay. Did you guys learn cost benefit analyses in another class?
Yes.
Okay. Cost benefit analysis? More or less? Well, but that's different then. It's not necessarily statistics. Sorry.
No, in accounting?
Okay. So I'm about halfway through the needs assessments.
Oh, that's a long time ago.
So I'm not, I mean, some of you understood, but I think it's not completely clear exactly what a needs assessment is. So can somebody tell me what it is?
It's like identifying the gap, right? A needs assessment?
It's defining, yeah, that's part of it. Go on.
Well, I was just gonna say, it tells you where the gaps are and what you don't know.
What do you mean when you say gaps?
Yeah, it helps you understand what you don't know, or where you're deficient, or where you need more information.
That could be part of it. You could also be describing a process evaluation, right? Because that's going to find your gaps in your program administration. But when we're talking about needs assessment, what are we specifically trying to find out?
What the problem is?
Yeah, what problem are we trying to solve?
What the problem is, but where specifically? Your program? Yes,
Side
your
of the
community of
program.
interest, exactly. So I think that's what was confusing for some people was where are you actually looking for the problem? So the problem is your community of interest. It's not the actual program, because that's what a process evaluation is doing, is looking at the problem, your actual program. Does that make sense?
What's the community of interest?
So your community of interest is whoever your program is going to be made for, right? So for you, it'd be homeless people who are experiencing homelessness.
With that shopping carts. With or without shopping carts.
So, gonna be merciful, and if you're not happy with your grade that you got, I'm going to let you resubmit the needs assessment because I do want you to understand this. So just you can redo it, and since I'm only halfway through, you can preempt me and just redo it with this new. I guess it's not new information, but with this review. So yeah, and then I'll just regrade it as if the other grade never existed. Okay. And if you have questions about a needs assessment, just come talk to me after class or during the break or when we have the period towards the end of class where you guys get together. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, cool. So efficiency analysis. So I'm going to be honest with you. This is like my least favorite thing. And this is what I do most of the day. So, yeah. So a cost benefit analysis is looking at basically the net value of something. So considered all of the costs, and then you minus those from the benefits, then that's your net value. And so in order to do that, you need to give monetary values to everything. Weird. So for example, you can say, if you're looking at a cost being, let's say, pollution, how do you actually put a dollar value to that, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So there's two places that you can do an efficiency analysis. You can do it before, let's have a little light, yeah, before or after the program. So before the program, that's going to be sort of convince people that your program is worthwhile, right? But oftentimes this can be difficult because you don't actually have any data to go off of, like hard data, but you can use things like benchmarking, right? To go benchmark other organizations and see what it has costed them. You can use agency records if you want to look at certain costs that you think are translatable. And then the ex post is if you want to get your program to get permanent funding, or if you want to expand your program, you can do a cost benefit analysis. Okay. So why do you think an efficiency analysis comes after your impact evaluation? So in Preach My Gospel, it says not to ask questions like this, but I did it anyways. It says don't ask questions about things you haven't taught yet.
So I think you just said that efficiency analysis, when it happens after the fact, or if you're trying to prolong the program, is about cost benefit analysis. You have to know what the benefit is, so an impact evaluation would have to come before that so that you could explain accurately what the benefit is relative to the overall costs.
Bingo. Awesome.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it makes sense to allocate substantial resources to increase your impact that much more. You know, and if it's not really increasing the impact is that you want by very much.
Exactly. So that's going to be the difference between a cost-benefit analysis and an efficiency analysis. So cost-benefit is just looking at the costs and the benefits, right? But an efficiency analysis is looking at what you guys just described. Is the cost the impact, right? So that's the difference that is going on there.
And I think it's like, and also too, I look at it like kind of like effectiveness before efficiency. Like if your program has to do something, like if you have like a car wash, you know, you could save all the money in the world, but if the cars are dirty, it doesn't work.
Yeah, why do the cost-benefit analysis if your program's junk? You just get rid of it. Yeah. Because a good cost-benefit analysis, like some of the ones that I've seen, are massive. Like, and they take into consideration all kinds of crazy things. But we're going to talk a little about that. Okay, so we've already talked about cost-benefit analysis. So assembling your cost data, where do you think we can get this cost data? Just thinking about the different methods that we've used.
References are great for putting numbers on lights and limbs and body parts that way.
Awesome. Yeah. So that could even be some form of benchmarking, right? It's kind of a creative benchmarking. Who did benchmarking? You guys used a different term than creative benchmarking. It's when you're comparing an organization that isn't within your sector or isn't necessarily the same as your organization.
Oh,
Yeah, strategic. So I call it creative benchmarking. It's the same thing. Before we move on, can you think of anything else?
So like historical agency records.
Awesome. So that's usually what I'm using all day. It's just like stuff from the general ledger, that kind of stuff. So do you guys know what externalities are? It's like secondary impacts, right? So let's say you have an education program that is going to get low-income students into college. What would be, and so your goal is getting them into college, what would be an externality of that, potentially? Sorry?
Them moving, before you can even get to that point.
Well,
You ask them, we're dropping out of the program.
but would that be a result of your program, like a secondary result of your program? It could be. Could be that your program is so terrible that it makes people move.
Or life conditions, so they have to drop out. Maybe there's some economic factors, so they have to drop
Yeah.
out of that program.
That could be an externality. What about a positive one?
Maybe all of your program is online and requires them to use computers in a way that they never have before. So it teaches them how to be techie, and which will benefit them in other ways.
Cool. Yeah.
Would one be like if they say they get a business degree and start a business, get really rich, and then the girls club in their community that they came from?
Mm-hmm. So that's like multiple externalities, right? them getting rich, building a Boys and Girls Club, right? Awesome.
High school dropout is that.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So these are things that you can attach costs to. Well, like you're saying, insurance companies will put cost to something. So subway, so the tube or the like underground station in London, they associate £5 per average on per person per hour. Okay, so sorry, for every hour that somebody is on the train, that's worth £5, or which is something like $70. So How did they come up with that number? I don't know. But there's these values that they attach to different things. So that's sort of what I'm talking about is what are called shadow prices. That's where you're giving prices to things that don't normally have values. So human life, pollution, how much does that actually cost us? So it's things that don't have a market value. So stuff that you're not going to go to the store and buy, right? So I guess you could go buy cigarettes and that would be pollution, or I don't know. You're not buying pollution. Can you guys think of any examples of something that might have a shadow price?
Well, for example, like delay, travel delay.
Exactly. What does that cost the economy?
Cyber Monday.
What?
Cyber Monday.
What about it?
They're always saying all this costs the American businesses so many millions of dollars. Yeah.
Hey, that's a chicken belt.
So March Madness, just like its cost to productivity. Like, okay, because everybody's just not working during that time. Okay.
Different type of productivity.
Opportunity cost. So if you could have used the money or the resource somewhere else, how much did that cost you, right? So it's kind of weird. I was trying to do an assessment of opportunity cost for a project I was working on recently for some money that we wanted to put towards a certain project. But like in local government, they don't really invest their money very well. Like the interest rate they were getting on the money they had in the bank was like 1% or like 1.5%. It was something like that. And I was just like, I'm not even gonna look at this. There's no point. You should always just spend the money in the government, I guess. I don't know. So discount rates. So you guys familiar with discount rates at all? No. Okay. So this is something. I guess that would be a discount rate, but it's basically the assumption that all money is going to be worth less in the future, right?
Okay.
So when we're talking about present value, look at how much a dollar is worth in the future. This is the equation you can use. It's not as complicated as it looks, actually.
Let's go through that.
I will. No, I use this like all the time at work, actually.
Please.
Benefits. 1, this is always going to stay the same, plus your discount rate. So your discount rate is how much is your money going to decrease, what percentage. So for example, this could be 0.03%. So it would just be 3%. So it's going to be 0.03. And then this is how many years?
So do you get that discount rate from some projection that somebody's gonna do?
Yeah,
right?
that's a good question.
Based on past, maybe, we feel like the inflation next year is gonna be X% or whatever.
Yeah.
That becomes your discount rate.
Yeah, so you can use that. It's called. Yeah, there's all kinds of different resources you can use to get this. You can also do your internal rate of return, which is basically looking at what the discount rate would need to be for your, how do you word it? For your money to not be it's like, there we go. Oh, yeah. Okay. on the next slide, because I knew I'd forget. Can somebody read this?
The calculated value for the discount rate necessary for total discounted program benefits to equal total discounted program costs.
See, this is why I couldn't remember it so bad.
Yes, that's very interesting.
Okay, yeah. So it's basically if you do your discount rate on your costs and your benefits, and then you want them to equal out. So you would just find whatever that discount rate is going to be, and you could use that. And that's just one way of doing it, and then you can adjust it from there. So, for example, you could use 3%, and if that's going to make it so everything equals 0, because for a cost-benefit analysis, you want after you've minused your cost from your benefits, you want it to be greater than 0, right? And then you assess whether it's worthwhile from there. So you can just figure out what's going to make that equal 0, and then you can adjust it from there depending on other things, like looking at the inflation rate or things like that. So as sort of a rule of thumb, I usually use like 3%. It's just a safe bet, 3 to 5%, which is sort of a standard area or range. So your net benefit, like I was talking about, it's just after you minus your cost from your benefits that's your net benefit. Okay, so question. Okay, so there's different perspectives that you can look at this from. So you have an accountant's perspective. So they're going to look just at clearly like monetary values. Have a community's perspective. So an example in a community's perspective is when you're going to look at things like pollution. So what impact does that have on your community, right? And then you're going to put a monetary value to that pollution. Or you think about other externalities that could exist.
So like hospital time, time spent in the hospital, breathing, things like that.
And then you could also take that a step further and think about how does that affect your
That has
your
effect on
family,
because
right?
All your family or your employment, days off work, and because you're in the hospital or whatever.
Exactly.
So how do you, so like, if you have a program that reduces like people going to prison, and then you can quantify like the cost of a person going to prison, right? But how do you quantify things like the public good part of it, like so like drop and murder or things like that, right? Or maybe there's not a dollar amount, but it's like the benefit to society, and they're doing some type of analysis, like do they assign dollars to that?
Yeah, so because you have to, right? This is cost benefit analysis, and that's the only way you can really do it is if you assign a value. So there was a analysis that somebody did on climate change, and they said we should invest now as a life in the future is worth as much as a life currently. That's a very subjective argument to make, right? Like there's no real way for you to defend that other than on moral grounds or something. So it is very subjective on how you're going to decide what the value of something is, but you need to make a reasonable argument. And whether that's on moral grounds or something else, it's going to be up to you and what you think effective and reasonable, I guess.
People have tried to make that argument before.
Which one?
The argument of as a life worth the same as a life. And depending on where you fall on the argument, you can get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's very subjective, right?
It's more than subjective, and it's changing instantaneously. If you look at a person that was completely functional and then they get into a horrible car wreck, are they worth the same? before or after the car?
I would say that's subjective, right?
But you can quantify.
But then you're not quantifying the person, you're quantifying something else attached to them. For example, you're quantifying their ability to work, you're not quantifying that person. So a person's worth and their ability to work are two different things, right? Because a child can't work as well as me, worth less than me. Right? But, I mean, I guess you could say there are objective measures, but I'd say in a lot of these things it is very subjective.
You know, you talk about this subjective money that is going around. I know Mayor McAdams of Salt Lake County has a Pay for Success program. His first Pay for Success program was he would go out and get a loan from a private company to pay for after-school programs, and the loan would be paid back in the fact that these after-school kids would not go to prison. In the future, not going to prison, and pay back the loan in the future. It's like a 20-year return. And so the benefit to the company is they get to say, well, we're helping at-risk kids, and they pay for the program up front, and then the county slowly pays them back in return on the fact that they're not going to jail or more productive than they would. So that's, as I understand it, that's a whole bunch of efficiency analysis right there, or efficiency process.
Yeah, exactly. So an example that is often used probably in business schools is like you'd have a question, something like, would you rather have $1 today, $1 today, or $1.10, say 5 years from now, right? Because of the discount rate. And so this is what we're talking about. So if you know that investing in a student is going to cost, let's say, $1 million per student, numbers here. And then in the future, you're going to have a return on investment of 10 million at some future date. You need to calculate how much $10 million, so you can do your present value, which is basically you'd use that same equation, but then you just put a minus sign next to the number of years, and then it would take you backwards. So your number of years right here, you just make that negative, and it would take you backwards. So then you could say $10 million is a good return on investment because we've looked at it. And what you're trying to do is compare apples to apples. Does that make sense? Because you can't compare future money with present money, right? Does anybody have questions about that? Okay. So, would you guys like your break now? Or group work now? Okay, cool. So would it be helpful for you guys to watch a focus group being run like in class? Did you find that helpful?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to just send out an email if somebody wants to respond. You can take part in this focus group, and then we'll just have a student run it as well. Maybe I'll give out extra credit. I don't know. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's just get together in groups, and if you have questions about this, it's fairly straightforward until you start thinking about putting values to things, but that's sort of a complicated thing, and that's going to take time and practice to understand how to do that. I mean, like, if I'm completely honest with you, I'm not the best at doing that either, and I don't know that many just crazy. It is.
This is gonna be like this is gonna be like, is you have a topic or like a thing that like focus groups or like, is that all?
Oh, okay. So I probably won't. So I probably won't have anything like that. I'll just give you a topic that you're trying to investigate with this group. And then, because that's how I've always run a focus group, is you just have a topic of interest, and then you're going to try to incorporate the things that they taught you. And I'll send out the video. I guess it's already there, but I'll send it out again. The video you can watch, and just pay attention to how he's trying to set the pacing, and he's trying to sort of set his dominance over the group with the focus group, or with the people in his focus group. So what he does at the very beginning is he doesn't allow people to actually answer questions in any long-winded way. He just asks them very closed-ended questions because he's trying to set the pacing. And then he's set the pacing. He's trying to show who's boss, so he'll keep going around the room very quickly. But then when you get about halfway through the focus group, you'll notice that he'll start to ask more open-ended questions, because then he's already sort of shown how he wants the group to be run, because focus groups can get out of hand really easily. Like certain people in there that want to dominate the conversation, and you need to control it. So we often think of focus groups as just people in a group answering questions, but there's this whole art to it, to making sure that it's run smoothly and that it doesn't get out of hand. So yeah, just pay attention to those things when I send it out, and then we'll come in and then we'll talk about the focus group afterwards. Questions about that? Did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. Just the topic here.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just get in your groups, and I will come around.
I think we're probably.
Gary, to be honest, Gary.
You guys, Yeah, so, yeah, your logic, that's part of it, right? So your logic model versus reality, and we're also looking at how to keep all. So tell me what you said about because your impact evaluation just to have people think about it.